Welcome to this comprehensive introduction to JavaScript, one of the most widely used programming languages in the world today. JavaScript runs natively in every modern web browser, which means no installation is required to get started. Whether you are accessing the web from a desktop, a mobile device, or any other internet-enabled platform, JavaScript is already available to you. This course is designed specifically for beginners and will take you from the foundational concepts all the way through modern ES6 syntax. By the end of this series, you will have the knowledge required to begin building functional JavaScript programs independently. The most important thing to understand from the outset is this: you learn JavaScript by building things, not just by watching. Execution is everything. Before writing your first line of JavaScript, you need to choose a coding environment. There are several strong options available. You can use a code editor such as Visual Studio Code and run your JavaScript within an HTML file opened in a web browser. Alternatively, platforms like FreeCodeCamp, CodePen, and Scrimba offer built-in JavaScript editors with integrated consoles, no setup required. For this course, any of these environments will work effectively. The key tool you will rely on throughout is the browser console, accessed through Developer Tools. When you write console.log in your JavaScript, the output appears directly in that console window. This is how you verify that your code is working correctly at every stage of development. Choose your environment and open it now. Comments and code clarity. The first concept every JavaScript developer must understand is how to write comments. A comment is a line of code that JavaScript deliberately ignores during execution. Comments serve no functional purpose. They exist purely to document your thinking, explain your logic, and communicate with other developers who may read your code in the future. In JavaScript, there are two types of comments. A single-line comment is created by placing two forward slashes before any text on a line. A multi-line comment begins with a forward slash followed by an asterisk and closes with an asterisk followed by a forward slash. Anything written between these markers is treated as a comment. Developing the discipline of writing clear, informative comments from the beginning of your coding journey will make you a significantly more effective developer. Data types and variables. JavaScript provides 7 core data types that you will work with throughout your development career. These include strings, which represent text, numbers, which represent numerical values, booleans, which are simply true or false, undefined, which means a variable has been declared but not yet assigned a value, null, which represents an intentional absence of value, symbols, which are unique immutable primitives, and objects, which store collections of key-value pairs. To work with any of these data types in a program, you store them inside variables. A variable is essentially a labeled container that holds a piece of data. It allows your program to store, retrieve, and manipulate information dynamically as the code executes. Understanding data types is the foundation upon which all JavaScript logic is built. Declaring variables, var, let, and const. In JavaScript, there are 3 keywords used to declare variables: var, let, and const. For many years, var was the only option available. It declares a variable with global or function-level scope, meaning it can be accessed broadly throughout your code. The let keyword, introduced in ES6, limits a variable's scope to the specific block in which it is declared. This offers more precise control and helps prevent unintended errors. The const keyword, also introduced in ES6, is used for variables that should never be reassigned after their initial declaration. Attempting to reassign a const variable will produce an error. As a general best practice in modern JavaScript development, you should default to using const for all variables, switch to let only when reassignment is necessary, and avoid var unless working with legacy codebases. Arithmetic operations. JavaScript supports all standard arithmetic operations, and their syntax is straightforward. Addition uses the plus symbol, subtraction uses the minus symbol, Multiplication uses the asterisk. Division uses the forward slash. To increment a number, meaning to add one, you use the double plus operator. To decrement, meaning to subtract one, you use the double minus operator. JavaScript also supports the remainder operator, represented by the percent symbol, which returns what is left over after one number is divided by another. This is particularly useful for determining whether a number is even or odd. If dividing a number by 2 produces a remainder of 0, the number is even. JavaScript also supports compound assignment operators such as plus equals and minus equals, which provide a more concise way to update a variable's value during calculation. Working with strings. A string in JavaScript is any sequence of characters enclosed within single quotes, double quotes, or backticks. Strings are used to represent and manipulate text data throughout your programs. There are several important concepts to understand when working with strings. First, if your string contains a quotation mark that matches its enclosing delimiter, you must use an escape character, a backslash, to prevent JavaScript from misinterpreting it as the end of the string. Second, strings can be joined together using a process called concatenation, achieved with the plus operator or the plus equals operator. Third, every string in JavaScript has a built-in length property that returns the total number of characters it contains. And fourth, you can access any individual character within a string using bracket notation with a zero-based index system. These fundamentals form the backbone of text handling in JavaScript. String methods and immutability. One of the most important characteristics of strings in JavaScript is that they are immutable. This means that once a string has been created, its individual characters cannot be modified directly using bracket notation. If you attempt to change a single character this way, JavaScript will silently ignore the operation. To effectively change a string, you must reassign the entire variable to a new string value. However, JavaScript provides powerful built-in string methods that allow you to work with strings in flexible ways. You can extract specific characters using bracket notation and the length property. For example, accessing the last character of any string regardless of its length is achieved by referencing the string at index length -1. Understanding both the limitations and capabilities of strings will make your code more reliable and predictable from the beginning. Arrays. Arrays are one of the most essential data structures in JavaScript. An array allows you to store multiple values in a single variable, organized in a sequential, indexed structure. Arrays are declared using square brackets, with each element separated by a comma. The elements within an array can be of any data type: strings, numbers, booleans, other arrays, or even objects. Arrays use zero-based indexing, meaning the first element is accessed at index 0. JavaScript provides 4 critical methods for manipulating the contents of an array. The push method adds an element to the end. The pop method removes and returns the last element. The shift method removes and returns the first element. And the unshift method adds an element to the beginning. Mastering these 4 methods gives you complete control over the contents of any array in your program. Functions. Functions are one of the most powerful concepts in JavaScript. A function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific task and can be called or invoked as many times as needed throughout your program. Functions are defined using the function keyword, followed by a name, a set of parentheses that can accept parameters, and a pair of curly braces containing the code to be executed. Parameters act as placeholders for values that are passed into the function when it is called. These passed-in values are referred to as arguments. Functions can also return a value using the return keyword, which both produces an output and immediately exits the function. Understanding the difference between declaring a function, passing arguments into it, and returning a result from it is essential for writing clean, organized, and reusable JavaScript code. Scope is one of the most critical concepts in JavaScript, and one that developers frequently misunderstand early in their learning journey. Scope refers to the context in which a variable is accessible throughout your program. A variable declared outside of any function has global scope, meaning it can be read and modified from anywhere in your code base. A variable declared inside a function has local scope, meaning it exists only within that function and cannot be accessed from outside it. When a local variable shares the same name as a global variable, the local variable takes precedence within its own function. This is known as variable shadowing. Using the let and const keywords enforces block-level scope, which is even more precise than function scope. Writing code with proper scope management prevents naming conflicts, reduces bugs, and makes your program significantly easier to maintain and debug. Conditional logic and if statements. Conditional logic is what allows your JavaScript programs to make decisions. The primary tool for implementing conditional logic is the if statement. An if statement evaluates a condition placed inside parentheses. If that condition resolves to true, the code inside the associated curly braces is executed. If the condition is false, the code is skipped. You can extend this logic using else if clauses to test additional conditions in sequence, and an else clause to define what happens when none of the preceding conditions are true. JavaScript provides a full set of comparison operators to build these conditions, including equality, strict equality, inequality, greater than, less than, and their inclusive counterparts. It also provides the logical and or operators, allowing you to evaluate multiple conditions simultaneously within a single statement. Conditional logic is the foundation of all decision-making in code. Switch statements. When your program needs to evaluate a single variable against multiple possible values, a switch statement is often more readable and efficient than a chain of else if statements. A switch statement begins with the switch keyword, followed by the variable being evaluated. Inside the switch block, each possible value is represented by a case label. When the variable matches a case, the associated code runs. Each case should end with a break statement, which exits the switch block and prevents the program from continuing to evaluate subsequent cases. If no case matches, the default option executes, functioning similarly to the else clause in a conditional chain. Switch statements also support intentional fall-through, where multiple case labels share the same code block by omitting break statements between them. This feature is useful when several inputs should produce the same result. Loops. Loops are one of the most fundamental tools in programming. They allow you to execute a block of code repeatedly without writing it multiple times. JavaScript provides several loop structures. The for loop is the most commonly used and consists of three components: initialization, a condition, and a final expression, all separated by semicolons. The while loop continuously executes its code block as long as its condition remains true, checking the condition before each iteration. The do-while loop is similar to the while loop, but guarantees that the code block runs at least once, checking the condition only after the first iteration. Loops are especially powerful when combined with arrays, enabling you to iterate over every element and perform operations on each one systematically. Mastering loop logic is essential for processing data efficiently in any JavaScript application. Objects. Objects are one of the most versatile and widely used data structures in JavaScript. While arrays store data in ordered sequences accessed by numeric index, objects store data as collections of key-value pairs accessed by named properties. An object is defined using curly braces, with each property written as a key, followed by a colon and its corresponding value. Property values can be of any data type: strings, numbers, arrays, or even other objects. Properties are accessed using either dot notation or bracket notation. Dot notation is simpler and used when the property name is a valid identifier. Bracket notation is required when the property name contains spaces or when the name is stored in a variable. Properties can be updated, added, or deleted after the object is created. Objects are the primary mechanism for modeling real-world entities and structured data in JavaScript. Loops through objects and arrays. Once you understand both arrays and objects, the next step is learning how to iterate through them efficiently. Arrays are best traversed using for loops, where the loop variable serves as the index counter and iterates from 0 to the array's length -1. This allows you to access and process every element systematically. For nested arrays, arrays that contain other arrays, you use nested for loops, where an outer loop iterates through the parent array and an inner loop iterates through each child array. Objects can be tested for the presence of specific properties using the built-in hasOwnProperty method, which returns true or false. Objects can also be used as lookup tables, a pattern that replaces complex switch statements or if-else chains with a single clean property access. Combining iteration with data structures unlocks the full potential of JavaScript for data processing. ES6 arrow functions and modern syntax. ES6 introduced arrow functions as a concise alternative to traditional function expressions. An arrow function eliminates the function keyword entirely, replacing it with a fat arrow symbol, an equal sign followed by a greater than symbol, placed between the parameter list and the function body. When an arrow function contains only a single return statement, the curly braces and the return keyword can both be omitted, reducing the entire function to a single, clean line of code. Arrow functions work particularly well when passed as arguments to higher-order functions such as map, filter, and reduce, which process collections of data by applying a function to each element. ES6 also introduced default parameters, which allow function arguments to carry a preset value when no argument is explicitly provided. These modern syntax improvements make JavaScript code more readable, concise, and expressive. Destructuring, spread, and rest. ES6 introduced 3 powerful features that significantly improve how JavaScript handles data. Destructuring assignment provides a concise syntax for extracting values from objects or arrays and assigning them directly to variables. For objects, you reference the property names inside curly braces. For arrays, you use square brackets, and the values are assigned in positional order. The spread operator, represented by 3 dots, expands an existing array into its individual elements. This is commonly used to copy arrays, combine arrays, or pass array contents as individual function arguments. The rest operator uses the same 3-dot syntax but performs the opposite function. It collects multiple individual values into a single array. This is particularly useful in functions that need to accept a variable number of arguments. Together, these 3 features form the foundation of modern, clean JavaScript data handling. Template literals and object shorthand. ES6 introduced template literals as a modern replacement for traditional string concatenation. Instead of using single or double quotation marks, template literals are enclosed in backticks. They support multi-line strings natively, allow embedded expressions using the $sign and curly brace syntax, and accept both single and double quotation marks inside the string without requiring escape characters. This makes complex string construction significantly cleaner and more readable. ES6 also introduced shorthand syntax for object literal declarations. When the name of a variable matches the name of the object property you intend to create, you no longer need to write the key-value pair explicitly. JavaScript infers the relationship automatically. Similarly, methods defined within objects no longer require the function keyword. These syntax improvements reduce repetition and make object creation more intuitive across the entire codebase.